Thanks everybody for joining us today. I'm Robert Balarjan. I manage the OSLC Connect group here at Sodius Willard. Today we're going to talk about IBM EOM and Jira, and especially talking about Xray. And so as we go through here, as Alexia said, feel free to drop some questions, notes. We'll try to answer them in the Q&A. We're going to try to do a little bit more demo heavy in these types of events. We know engineers like to see tools work, so that's what we're going to do. As well as just keep in mind, this product is on the Atlassian marketplace. So those of you with your Jira data center products, you can go ahead and download a free trial, be able to use it for 30 days in your environment and see how it works and how it operates, and have support from our team. So as we go through here, we know getting your hands on the product is the most valuable. So I'll do a few slides here, give you an intro of what we're doing and why we're doing it, and then we'll go live in the tools and be able to do some demos and see how this works together. So what we're going to do is focus on how EOM and Atlassian Jira work together, and why we do OSLC for that, as well as talk a little bit about some of our existing customers on how they try to use that product. And as I mentioned, free trials are always available, and we're always here to be able to support you in your enterprise. So if you have questions when you're trying to set it up, please just let us know. And we started doing our OSLC Connect for Jira, I think about 2018 or 2019. The reason why we were doing that is because we saw a growing need for that capability. Jira has always been pretty pervasive the last decade in the industry, and there's many marketplace extensions to be able to connect to your software configuration management tools, etc. But we also know that IBM EOM has a level of rigor and structure and configuration management for things like requirements that are very important in our regulated industries, and so we wanted to be able to bridge that gap and be able to bring those two together. And really what we're trying to do is make sure that people can stay on the tools that they want, and be easier for engineers to operate. Now, we've been doing this for a while, as I said. There's been requests over the years for us to be able to support testing artifacts as well as the change artifacts, and that's really why we're here today. We've extended our product to be able to support Xray as well, and we'll show in detail what that means and how that operates as Xray being a first-class citizen in the IBM EOM tool suite. What we implemented here is part of the OSLC standard. What we like about OSLC is it's not just one tool vendor's implementation. It's an industry standard how tools should collaborate. And so we can link information across projects without copying that data. So that makes it much more enterprise friendly. We're not moving data around. We don't have to figure out where the original golden source is. And we also can have authentication audit controls to be able to make sure that data ownership stays where it was at. And we'll see that live as we navigate between these tools and show how you can integrate tools effectively using the standard. And so what we did to implement this product was we added an extension to the Jira platform. And so you'll find this on the Atlassian marketplace, OSLC Connect for Jira. And what this is a product that implements within your Jira data center. Most of our customers are clustered environments, so multi-node implementation. It allows the extension to these OSLC interfaces to connect to tools like IBM EOM. And so it's also, to be on the Atlassian marketplace, we have to be approved, which means we have to go through rigorous tests and performance reviews with Atlassian. And so you should have confidence that it's going to work in your enterprise environment. And what we've added is all the server collaboration, so how Jira connects to EOM, how we do previews, how we do reporting, how do we do support for these different artifact types, so changes, configuration management, as well as quality management. We'll walk through that. But really the idea is here is we want to grow capability within your organization without changing your tools. So we want to be able to connect the tools that you already have. What you should see as we go through here is you're going to have a Atlassian Jira experience within Jira, and you'll have a IBM EOM experience within EOM, and you'll have access to the tools data within the other repository and be able to see, review it, and navigate to it. So it tends to be very seamless in terms of how we interact, and that's what we'll demo here momentarily. In terms of our usage of our products, so like I said, we've been around for like 5 or 6 years in terms of the product. in terms of wide industry usage. Automotive, aerospace, defense, electronics, med devices, all are using this product. As you sound, that's regulated industries. And so, as well as they work in Jira environments from 50 users up to 50,000 users. So we've seen widely different sets of scale in terms of performance and scaling across those different users. And what the primary use cases are working across silos. So being able to have test engineers work with software engineers, work with requirements engineers, and also some level where we have some OEMs collaborating, so vendor tier one type relationships in terms of how they're collaborating across different enterprises. And so the primary goal is to be able to have reporting so we can have traceability across this information and this data, to be able to meet some of our audits and standards, whether they're ISO standards or whether they're ASPICE standards or whether they're DO 178 standards. All these industries have your regulations in terms of traceability, and that's what the role is within these tools. Now, we don't prescribe a particular process or a particular mechanism. I'll try to point out some of the places that you can configure our product to be able to hit within your process, but that's also why we recommend doing a trial within your own environment. But today we're going to focus on DOORS Next, a little bit of some of the IBM EOM tools along next to that. Obviously Jira Data Center, Xray, and some work within Report Builder to be able to show you some traceability. So with that, I'm going to transition over and we're going to go live within a demo environment. So we'll make sure that all of our connectivity and all of our connections are operational, and it gives you a good feel of what things are here. So as we start this demo, we're going to start in DOORS Next. And the reason being is this is the primary purpose or engagement that we know a lot of our customers have. They have requirements. They want to be able to have traceability to Jira. And they often have this, and we've done this for a while, traceability to their change artifacts. So how they plan to implement certain sets of requirements. So I just have a demo module here that allows us to be able to go through and be able to see Jira issues related to requirements in DOORS Next. And so the nice thing about OSLC, we can do things like do rich hovers, be able to have access to those artifacts. And the nice thing also is Jira also wants us to have a login and be able to have connectivity to these items and to these artifacts. And so let's make sure that we have our authentication cycles in place here. And hold on a second. Typical demo challenges. I was logged in a little bit ago. My session expired. Let me go ahead and just reset Chrome and we'll try this again. This is how you know it's actually a real demo. Let's log into EOM. And then let's actually log into Jira and be able to have access and review of those artifacts. Hey, that's a login prompt that we're looking for. And so you can see rich previews and access to that artifacts. What happened when we logged in there, and that login prompt, that was my login prompt from Jira, is asking for my own user information. So whenever I'm looking at information within EOM that's Jira related information, that's actually going to be authenticated through Jira. So this allows us to be able to make sure we have secure access to those artifacts and see those details as we might expect. Now, one of the things that we do a lot with IBM EOM is, and motivations for IBM EOM, is actually being able to use things called versions and configurations. You'll see here at the top of the screen, I have my AMR version 1 configuration here. And so what this is this allows me to be able to control what versions of artifacts that I go together. And we'll dive into our global configuration in a minute, but think of that as the way in which I control which versions of artifacts I look at across multiple different tools, not just IBM EOM, but also tools like Jira. So as I look through here, you can see the different artifacts that I might be doing in terms of implementation stories for version 1. If I switch and wanted to look overall at a version 2, I can go ahead and do this. But what you'll see is actually I'll have different sets of Jira artifacts. And this is actually some of the value that we have with IBM EOM and using global configuration and our implementation with Jira, is that we can look at and see different versions of artifacts and be able to access those different versions of artifacts from within IBM EOM. So I can switch to different versions of these artifacts. And so I can switch back to my version 1 if I want to. and we'll be able to see those specific artifacts that we have. So I can navigate and be able to see these artifacts. The nice other thing is not only do I have rich previews to be able to access those artifacts, I can also navigate to those artifacts if I want to. With a single click of the button, I can navigate over to this, or I could even open it into another tab. And so what I can see here is my artifact within Jira. And you'll see that same concept here as well, is that I haven't logged into EOM yet, so I haven't been able to see these artifacts and these updates. All I'm going to see is that I have a link to these artifacts and a prompt to be able to log in. So I'm going to have to do that once a session. But once I log into EOM, I'm going to have access to those artifacts as well. And I can do things like rich hovers to be able to see those artifacts from within Jira. And you also know some things interesting here, some decorators here for us to be able to know statuses of artifacts. And the same concept applies within our implementation of Jira. As if I come in here and say that, okay, instead of working on version 1, I actually want to work on version 2. You're going to see that I'm going to update and I'm going to be able to get different versions of those requirements. So I'm going to be able to see and access those artifacts in a different version. In fact, if I went ahead and clicked on this version now, I could open this link in a new tab. We're going to go over and you're going to see now I'm in AMR version 2. And so I can see a different set of artifacts just by being able to navigate across and be able to see those within different navigations and different artifacts and be able to see and navigate to them. Just as simple as it is that I can also do things like I can add links. So in here now I want to go ahead and add a link. I can choose an existing artifact, or I could even do things like create a new artifact. And you'll see that I have a new story field that it's here. You'll see that I have a recommended type. Those are all configurable within our product, so you can configure when I'm coming from DOORS Next, what type of artifacts do I want to recommend that you create to. And we can also even make those be exclusive dialogues. So instead of saying that I can pick a different artifact type, I can have this fixed. But I can go ahead and say, let's do a webinar artifact. And you'll see some other things here. I automatically set my fixed version because I knew which version of my global configuration I was in. So you'll be able to see that I set a fixed version based on some of that configurations already. So I can go ahead and create that artifact and be able to see that within here. You also see a little bit of update. You see this item 18 that I was working on before show up in the dialog here. That's because the way that IBM operates, it does a local query, and those queries sometimes take about a minute to be able to operate. So while I navigated originally from this item over into my requirements, it took about a minute for those things to be updated. That's pretty standard for as we change those configurations and operate. So that's just a normal IBM behavior. But from now on, I can navigate back and forth between those elements. And then we'll do things like as we operate in here, we can have the typical things like within Jira, I can automatically be able to search for things. You'll see that before I recommended an artifact, you'll see that also I'll put warnings on here in terms of when I try to connect somebody that's inconsistent in terms of type or in terms of global configuration. It'll put a warning on here to be able to recommend that I make a better decision on what artifacts I'm creating and linking between these artifacts. So that gives you a little bit of a sense of kind of the normal behavior that we've been doing in these products. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is we usually want to be able to do reports. And so when we look at things like reports, we can have things like an implements requirement report. So in this case, I might want to be able to create a report where I can show my implemented Jira items related to my requirements. And so you can see that here, that also I have these Jira issues here. We have our requirements here. And so we're actually being able to do reporting across the different repositories and be able to have these artifacts all in one place and be able to report on those. And you'll be able to see that we implement that such that if I'm in, this is the IBM reporting tool, if I look at the type of artifact types that I have here, you're going to see a Jira issue is now a native part of this. So we're contributing that information to what's called LQE, so an index of those data artifacts, and so that you can actually have those artifacts within your report. And indeed, we'll show it a little bit later, but when you look at the formatting and results here, you can add different attributes. So if I looked at my Jira issue, you're going to see different relationship types, different attributes that I could put in here. I could put things like story points, things that are native to Jira, so you can actually even extend it to be able to add your custom Jira types in here. So we can do reporting across this. And so this gives us kind of the background and foundation of the product that we've been doing for a while now, is that we have a rich global configuration managed aware environment that allows you to be able to do traditional usage of Jira. So changes to requirements to test cases and such. Now, what we've done now, and we can switch over to a different project here. Let's go ahead and we'll walk into Xray. Let me see if I can pick a good module for us to be able to look at. Let's look at our system requirements project. We're going to do something a little bit different. So not only these implemented by relationships here, you also now see this validated by relationship. So this is a traditional relationship to a testing artifact. So it's something we haven't supported in the past. When we look at the OSLC standard, they have different types of artifacts that we support. Change requests are things that we operate on most natively with Jira, but with tools like Xray, they've actually modified the issue types within Jira so that they can support testing artifacts. So test cases, test execution records, test plans, and such. And so now what we have is the ability to be able to show not only just the implemented by issues, so this is actually a feature type that's in one project in Jira, and we actually have a Xray type that's in a different project. So this is in my Xray project. And so along the way, we have that same nice capability that we can come in here and we can add a link. I can be able to search for an Xray artifact if I wanted to. So if I wanted to be able to look for a specific test case, I can find a test case. You'll see that I'm meeting that specific type, but we'll actually see that, hey, I have that same warning. This is not working in that same global configuration, so it's working in a different global configuration than this. So I can do some other things. I can maybe create a new item. And you'll see now, before we were looking at like a story being created, you're going to see that your native types are being supported here. So in this case, a test. And so I can create a new test if I want. And I can be able to see those artifacts and see that activity and those new artifacts that I can create live within Xray and within our Jira system, live from within this environment. So what this allows me to be able to do is I can see those artifacts, I can navigate to those artifacts. You're going to see how we're related to a specific version. We can see things like that are native to Xray, like the test run status. So as I look through these items, I might be able to see a different status on one of these, like this test case has actually been run, it's passed. We're going to see that information live from the Xray tool within DOORS Next. So this gives you a bit of a flavor of this. Now, in addition, very similar to what we did before, we can go ahead and actually look at a different global configuration. And so if I actually modify this and switch to a different configuration, I can look at, say, let's look in my Xray project here. Let's look for different configurations that I might have. If I switch to configuration 2, you're going to see I have a different set of test cases that are going to be validated within that version. And I can be able to navigate and I can create new elements that are associated with that. So if I wanted to add a link, I would actually update and I could create a new artifact. You're going to see that I'm going to switch to a different version. I can have that navigation. Now, the way that operates and the way that works, we'll give you a little bit of sense here. We can navigate over to this global configuration. You're going to see within this global configuration 2 different ways for us to be able to include artifacts. Number one is the traditional way, and this is what we do for change requests. So in this case, we might have a version 1, or in this case, we saw that other implemented by project. This is my AMR change version project. These are actually different releases or different fixed-in versions that I might put on a Jira issue. So typically when we work with those, we're going to say, I'm going to work on this particular target or this particular element, and that's how we can identify which changes I want to include within something like a DOORS Next project. When we start working with test cases are versioned artifacts. So what we're going to do is we're going to identify a version of those test cases that I wouldn't want to include in those projects. So in this case, I can go ahead and, in this case, select a configuration. So if I looked at my Xray project, I could look for which different version I want to include in there. And when I include a specific version, you're going to see that I could actually navigate over to that and see which artifacts are included in that version. And I can see which test cases and which test results and other items that are included in my configuration. So it gives me a way to be able to operate and interact with these items and do it effectively and be able to bridge across that gap between what I do within my test cases and what I do within my DOORS Next requirements. And so and we can do exactly what we wanted to do before. We can navigate over to this. A few things that we didn't show before that I think probably merit a little value here. Let's do this a little bit different. Let's actually let's open a new tab here. Let's do hover. Let's open a new tab. Some of the different types of things that we can do is also creating relationships from within Jira as well. If we want to be able to come out in this test case, we have additional requirements that we want to be able to create relationships to. We can come in here and say we want to validate requirements, and we can pick additional requirements. It's going to pick up what version we're on, what configuration we're in, so we can go ahead and be able to find requirements that we want to create relationships to right from within Jira and be able to have that nice part of that OSLC interface. It gives me that dialogue so I can make those types of connections. The other nice thing is what we do is we allow you to be able to do things like drag and drop. So I can take a requirement here from within EOM and be able to drag that over to my Jira screen, drop it on here. It's going to be able to do some validation here. It's going to make sure it's working in the same configuration. It's going to make sure it's the right valid type, and it's going to make sure what type of relationship that's valid for it to be able to do, so I can create links. So lots of different ways that I can be able to create those relationships and create those types. And the other thing you'll notice here is that there's a little bit of difference here. If I look at when I go to create link relationships, you're going to see that there's specific types that are based on what type I am. So I'm a test artifact or a test case. I'm going to only get the validates and related change request type relationships. So it gives me a lot of power to be able to do those types of reporting, those types of relationship types across these different systems. Now, the other thing we wanted to do is obviously we want to be able to still do reports. So if I come back and look at my reports, I can do some other things as well. So let's take a look back at my reports here. So one of the ways that we want to be able to do reporting is not just across EOM and Jira. We might have some relationship types that are within Jira that we want to capture as well. So in this case, we might want to look from a Jira issue to a Jira test case to a EOM requirement. We can build up those sets of relationships within our product as well. So as we looked at, say that artifact that we had here had a relationship, tests a particular defect, so we can actually show that relationship using native Jira types, but we're going to actually represent those as OSLC types to EOM, and so it can do the navigation within those reports. And so you can see these reports are actually built up a bit more complex. So I can take a look at how this data is being built up and be able to see as we navigate from a Jira issue to a Jira test case to a requirement and build that whole report together within IBM EOM. So it's the nice thing is we're taking that Jira data and being able to structure it so EOM can understand that, take advantage of it, and be able to allow you to be able to do things like format those results. So you'll see like things like test run status. That's a customized type within Xray. We're allowed to be able to put that attribute on the test case artifact, and so it's reportable with EOM. And you can see that when we run these reports, that you're going to see things like what is the pass-fail status of those runs, and be able to have your traceability and be able to see from test case to requirements to issues, no matter what tool that you're actually operating in. So that gives you kind of a sense of the overall feature set, but behind the scenes, we're doing several things to be able to make this happen for you. And so if we look into how we configure and manage these apps and some of the changes that we've done across the way, these are the types of things that you can do when you're actually utilizing our product. We're going to see things like the issue types mapping. So Traditionally, what we had, and I can go back to one of my original projects here. So this is the first project that I looked at. And so you're going to see that our native types are CM change requests. So these are change management artifacts. It's the natural fit for Jira artifacts, and it's what we've done for years and years. What we put in our product, though, is the ability to be able to customize how this shows up into EOM and how people operate with it. So number one, we can do some configurations of how we link from Jira. So these are the standard OSLC link types. And so you can allow you to be able to control how a Jira user might utilize a story. What types of artifacts do you want to link to? What relationships types do you want? And do you want to allow them to be able to do selection and creation, or just selection only? So types of things like when I go to create links from a Jira issue to a requirement, oftentimes I only want people to be able to have the selection option, so I can operate in that way. Now, the other side of that scenario is that I also can control how it appears from the other tools, and so how it appears from EOM. So I can configure, so I can tell it, this is a plan item, so I want to use it on the implements by relationship. I might want to customize how that is presented, and I might control whether or not I want them to be able to do a selection only dialog, or be able to do selection and creation like we saw in the demo, and as well as I can do some more tighter controls and say, okay, I don't want you to be able to change this type. So if I want to have a really strong relationship on how people are building those links and saying stories are the only way somebody can create that implemented by relationship, I can go ahead and tick this box and be able to do that configuration. So that allows us to be able to build configuration in our product, and that's something that's been evolving for a while. What we did more recently and how we support Xray is that we extend out what those relationships are. And that means that we get to change what these different types of artifacts are. So in this case, this is how I was able to take these standard types within Xray and be able to map them to the OSLC types. So in this case, like a QM test case. So a test in Xray from the OSLC standards, a QM test case. And so that's how we get to be able to do, we can change how those things are configured. So we have some standard mappings here that we support. And so you can pick these different types of OSLC types. So if you're using Xray, there's a default types of configuration you might want to do. If you have your own testing types within certain projects, you can also do those configurations yourself and have those appear. And then we still have those same controlling type things. You're going to see a less populated set of configurations because a test type only links to a couple different things in a couple different ways, but also I can disable that. So you saw that when I went to that dialog, I had a validates requirement and a relates change request is the only option. It's because I disabled my test development item and my validates architecture element. I didn't have a project relationship. Now, the other way, I can be able to configure how that dialog looks and whether or not I want to have it exclusive and what options are there. So this gives me a lot of configurations and allows me to be able to do a lot of controls within my environment between Xray and how I utilize my Xray tools to DOORS Next and be able to do that reporting and have access to those things. And so that's kind of the big new appearance of what we've introduced in our product. There's a lot of other different features that are in there, but what we wanted to do is introduce, we have now the access to be able to map to those QM types, so we can map Xray artifacts into testing artifacts, so we can do reporting within EOM and have that full traceability. And now you can use DOORS Next with Xray with your Jira changes and still get that whole traceability path between issues, test artifacts, defects, and your requirements. So that's kind of the high level of things. Don't want to spend too much time being able to take your time out of your day. So with that, I think that's a pretty good overview of what products and what capabilities we have going on in the tooling. And so with that, I'll hand it over to Alexia and see what she has in terms of questions that we might have.